to the first session of the 21st Annual Northwest Interlibrary Loan Resource Sharing Conference. INWILL's land acknowledgement is read at our opening and closing sessions. The written land acknowledgement statement is on our website at inwill.org under the Land Acknowledgement tab, and there is a link in the chat. Today's date is September 8, 2022. This session is titled Creating a Work-Life Balance, Lessons from a First-Year Librarian, and will be presented by Catherine Tennyson. My name is Wanda Barrett, and I am the convener for this session. This session is being recorded with permission from the presenters. Because they retain copyright to the information they're presenting, they may choose to request its removal from public viewing in the future by written request to the INWILL Committee Chairperson. However, at this time, it is planned that recordings will be made available once captions have been added. Attendees will be notified when recordings are available. To turn live captioning on, click the CC link at the bottom of the screen and select Show Subtitle. If you have a question during the session, please use the Q&A function in Whova, and I will pose these to the presenter at the end of their presentation. When the presentation ends, please complete the post-session survey in Whova located on the conference homepage. INWILL and presenters appreciate and use your feedback. The link should also be in the chat. On that note, I will turn the session over to Catherine.
Good morning, or if you're in my time zone, good afternoon. I apologize for my voice. I had COVID for the first time last week, and I completely lost my voice. I actually thought I would have to cancel this presentation, but thanks to the wonderful science of medicine, I am doing much better. As you know, I am Catherine, and I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about myself. I actually did not go through my life thinking that I would be a librarian. I actually wanted to be a businesswoman and manage a company. However, while earning my MBA and working for a few companies, I realized I was completely miserable with the work I was doing. So I thought about what job I had worked for in the past that I loved. That answer was clear to me. I loved my time as a student worker at Rogers State University Libraries. So in the middle of my MBA program, I switched jobs and career paths. But since I was halfway through my MBA program, I decided to stick with it, and I graduated with my MBA in March of 2018, then immediately enrolled in the University of Oklahoma's MLIS program. In May of 2021, I graduated with my MLIS and a graduate certificate in data analytics for information professionals. In June of 2021, I interviewed for and was offered the position of collection management and technical services librarian at Southwestern Oklahoma State University. I began working there on August 11th, 2021. Before I started working at Rogers State University, before I started working at SWOSU, I worked at Rogers State University Libraries as their acquisition technician, 203 miles east of Southwestern. I lived in Owasso, which is about right there, and it is a suburb of Tulsa. I moved to the city of Clinton, which is located about 20 minutes west of Weatherford. So not only did I have to get used to being a librarian managing 3 employees and several student workers, all of which was new to me, I also had to get used to living in a small town that didn't even have a Walmart. And even though I remained in the same state, everything was different, especially the landscape. I went from being surrounded by trees, lakes, and rivers to the drought-affected rolling plains of western Oklahoma. But what has taken me the longest to get used to is actually the pace of life here. Everything moves slower, even work. I went from the rush of the city to really slow paced life. And I went from getting things done quickly and expecting them to be done quickly to everyone being laxed about when things got done. Everyone seemed to procrastinate, and then it was a mad rush at the end to get it done on time. And I'll tell you a story later in this presentation that makes this opinion further ingrained in me. But all of these changes were stressful, and add in my severe anxiety disorder and my PTSD, as well as the requirements for continuation and tenure. I felt like I was drowning, especially my first semester working here. And despite this feeling of drowning, it wasn't until December that I realized that I really needed to create a work-life balance to help me manage my stress and my anxiety. In my original plan, I was not going to include a slide that talks about the effects of stress on the body, since almost everyone knows the effects it can have. However, 3 heartbreaking events changed my plans. At the end of May, my husband's coworker died from a stress-induced stroke. In the first week of June, my aunt suffered from a stress-induced stroke. She was a very independent and strong woman, and before she retired, she was actually the president of an oil company in Texas. Her stroke at the beginning of June changed her life forever. She is no longer the strong and independent woman she was before. She has lost her long-term memory and can no longer remember anything past 5 minutes. Her doctors have declared her completely disabled and deemed she cannot live by herself. And then the third tragedy happened at the end of July. We got word that another of my husband's coworkers had died, this time from a stress-induced heart attack. These 3 events are stark reminders that no one is exempted from the effects of stress. A study recently performed by the World Health Organization and International Labor Organization estimates that exposure to long work hours is a prevalent occupational risk factor attributable for a large number of deaths and DALYs due to ischemic heart disease and stroke. They go on to further estimate that over 750,000 deaths and over 23 million disability adjusted life years were attributed to working 55 hours or more a week. So not only can stress increase your chance of a heart attack or stroke, but according to the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, the lack of sleep that stress can cause can also increase your risk of car wrecks, workplace injuries, and malpractice. And to add insult to injury, can further increase your risk of having a heart attack or a stroke. Take a minute to think about that. So not only does stress increase your chance of a heart attack or stroke, but one of the effects of stress, poor sleep, can also further your risk. It's not worth it. Your life and your health are not worth it. You can help more people and make a bigger difference by caring for yourself. My husband and his coworkers are mental health therapists, and the death of his coworkers opened his eyes. He used to give all of himself to his clients, but their deaths made him realize that if he continued to give all of himself, that there would eventually be nothing else to give. It would either burn him out or it would kill him. So he joined me in my quest to create a work-life balance and followed the steps I started back in December. The first steps that I took in creating a work-life balance for myself was to identify the factor driving me to choose to have a poor work-life balance. I did not wake up each morning and decide I was going to let work take over my life. Nobody does that. So, as corny as it sounds, I looked into myself and I found my driving factor. It was one big factor that had actually shown itself in three different ways. And that factor is the need to always prove myself, even to everyone and even to myself, that I was the right person for the job. And that even though I was to prove that I was not an imposter, and that even though I was new and still had things to learn, I was not an idiot and could make impactful changes. It took me a while to understand that I was not alone in feeling this way. And there's actually a primal factor to my need to prove myself. I was actually unaware of this primal factor until I read Don't Feed the Monkey Mind by Jennifer Shannon. This book was recommended to me by my wonderful therapist, who is continuing to help me overcome my severe anxiety and my PTSD. And I actually highly recommend this book to everyone. It has a lot of great information about what drives anxieties and fears and the steps you can take to overcome that, including making boundaries and how they can be applied to your work life. So in this book, she said, we have always hunted and housed ourselves together in packs, so we can watch out for each other. Your ancestors' social status within their families and tribes was crucial to their survival. In order to protect your social standing, your monkey mind is always watching and listening to those around you, looking for signals telling whether you are respected, whether you are loved, and whether you belong. So we have this primal desire to be accepted by our tribe, whether that tribe is our colleagues, community members, family, or friends. And when we do something that threatens that standing, our primal brain sends signals that tells us that our behavior is not acceptable. And this signal comes in the form of fear and anxiety. So the three things that made me feel like I was not proving myself and thus triggering my primal brain and increasing my anxiety around work, and which then increased my stress, were when I said no, when I would not work on my time off, and when I didn't get everything done all at once, which that last one is impossible. I don't know why I felt that way, but I did. So I felt that I always needed to say yes when someone asked me for something. And if I did not check my emails during my time off, I would miss something vital and I would get in trouble. I also felt that if I did not get everything done at once, I was a failure. And to my primal brain, doing these three things kept me in good standing with my tribe. And even though I knew that if I said no and did not check my email or work while I was off, and did not get everything done at once, my standing would not be affected. However, my primal brain still saw these as a threat. And with this new insight into why I always felt like I had to do these three things, I began to take steps to make changes to help my primal brain understand that these things did not affect my social standing with my tribe, in this case, my colleagues. To create a work-life balance, I had to start with myself. No one else could decide for me to make me balance my work and life. I had to be the one who said, I am no longer going to work during my time off. I am no longer going to say yes to everything. I'm no longer going to expect myself to get everything done at once. And so once I decided to create a work-life balance, the second thing I did was I got an accountability partner. I thought that if an accountability partner can help you make healthy decisions, such as working out and eating healthy, then they can help you with keeping a work-life balance. This person can be anyone you want it to be, but I chose myself because we're around each other all the time when we're off. And he can ask me why I am checking my emails at work when I'm supposed to be off work. It also helped him with keeping his own work-life balance because he started realizing he was checking his emails as well, or checking his work phone. The third step that I took was to create boundaries. This is where keeping a work-life balance becomes difficult, and it is an ongoing process. It takes time for these boundaries to really set in, because you're not only changing your habits, but what your primal brain sees as a threat to your social standing. Making yourself keep to these boundaries takes time to get used to. So I started small. For me, it was setting small goals like, I'm not going to check my email when I get home today. And the more I achieved these small goals, the more I went without checking my email when I was at home, went without checking my email when I was at home, the more my primal brain saw that I was not going to become an outcast. And the easier it got to increase my goals. I have yet been able to go through a long time off period without trying to work. But I no longer work when I am off during my work week or the weekend. It takes time to not only create these new habits, but to change a primal instinct to protect us. And I started my process of creating a work-life balance in December. And while I no longer have crippling anxiety about not always saying yes and not working on my time off or not getting everything done at once, I still do it, especially when I'm off for more than a couple of days. But stumbling is not the end of a work-life balance. You just have to pick yourself up and say, I'll do better next time. It has been 9 months since I started my work-life balance, and I can finally start catching myself before I breach these boundaries I have set. Now, the fourth step I took was prioritizing my tasks at work. This step helped me with keeping my boundaries. First, I saw how much was on my plate, so I can justify to myself that saying no was okay. Next, it allowed me to see what I needed to do first and what could wait. So this helped me feel like I did not have to work on my time off and that I don't have to have everything done all at once because I knew when each thing needed to be done. The fifth step I took was expecting that fires happen, whether literal or metaphorical. And while they might disrupt my work-life balance, such as causing me to work during my time off, I did not need to make it a habit again. And this is an example of a very, very recent fire happening that disrupted my work-life balance. It's also an example of why I feel like procrastination is a part of the culture in this area. In the middle of the fall 2021 semester, we heard rumblings that things would change on our Sayre campus. We did not know what would happen, but since we had a library on that campus, we paid close attention to those rumblings. And during the remaining of the semester and the spring semester, we still had not heard anything other than they might close the library. May rolls around, and we still have not heard anything. At the end of the spring semester, the librarians, including myself, are off until the start of the summer semester. So at the start of the summer semester, the director, the Sayre librarian, and I devised a plan for the Sayre library. By this time, we still did not have official word on what would happen to the library, just that our university was looking at possibly renting out the building the library was in to the public school district. In the middle of June, we enacted the plan of having all the duplicate titles moved from the Sayre Library to the Weatherford Library to be compared to the titles there, where we would keep the best condition one and get rid of the one in the worst condition. And by the end of July, we had all of the duplicate titles packed up, and we were waiting on approval to rent a U-Haul truck to transport them to the Weatherford campus, since the university did not have a vehicle that could transport the boxes. The end of July also marks the end of the summer semester, which also means that the librarians are off until the start of the fall semester. So we were going to be off for 3 weeks, but despite being off, the three of us agreed that it would be best if we worked in Sayre for 1 or 2 days during our time off. So we did not feel overwhelmed at the beginning of the fall semester. So we went out there on the 3rd of August to pack up the extra items in the Sayre library that we did not need, such as all the bookends and the furniture. And on this trip, we also decided that since we did not have any more boxes and still hadn't heard anything about the U-Haul rental, we were not going to worry about working anymore during the rest of our time off. However, all of that changed. 2 days later, on August 5th, we finally received official notice that the building the library was in was going to be demolished on August 22nd. And we had to have everything moved out of that building before then. We went from not knowing what would happen to, oh my gosh, we have to move the entire library out. And we only had 2 weeks to do it. So we were out of boxes. So it was a mad rush to find more boxes. We still hadn't received approval for getting a U-Haul. So that was expedited. And we had to find volunteers to help with packing the rest of the boxes and loading the truck. Luckily, the Sayre physical plant stepped up, and it went from only 3 of us working on the Sayre library to the physical plant getting the U-Haul for us. And they actually found the volunteers to help pack up the library and load the truck. On the morning of Thursday, August 11th, the first load of boxes and furniture we were keeping made its way to Weatherford, with another load scheduled to be delivered later that day. And I actually left Sayre earlier than normal on Thursday to go back to the Weatherford library so I can get all the boxes that have been unpacked to take them back to Sayre. It was crazy, but with the help of the volunteers and the Sayre physical plant, we packed up the library and finished moving out on August 18th, 4 days before the scheduled demolition of the building. And while I had to break a few of my boundaries for this fire, I'm not going to allow it to destroy the progress I've made. I am going to take the days off I had to work during my time off. And I'm not, even though I had to check email and all that stuff while I was off, I'm not going to continue that. I'm going to go back to my boundary of not checking emails when or working when I am off. I also had to rework my priorities since I now had to merge 2 library collections together. So some things that were a priority to get done took a backseat so that my department could work on the Sayre library materials. And it's okay to have to rework your priorities. Just don't let it destroy your boundaries that you set. And if they have to, like in my situation, don't let it cause your entire work-life balance to collapse. So the last thing I did to help my work-life balance was I took time for myself. If I felt I was getting overwhelmed, I would leave my desk and walk the stacks just so I can have some time away. And then I would come back and continue working. I also ensured that I had a cool down time after work. I took 30 minutes for myself after work so that I could get out of the work mindset. And when I got out of the work mindset, I realized it helped with my need to work while I was off. For me, this cool down time was reading for 30 minutes when I got home. But for my husband, it's listening to music on his drive home and sometimes not coming straight in, but sitting in his car listening to music for a little longer, especially if he's had a really bad day. And it's not selfish to take this time off for yourself. Everyone needs time to decompress from work, no matter what the job is. So take time for yourself after work to decompress. Go for a walk, take a longer route driving home, or even just sit in your car for a bit before going inside. It does not have to be hours for your decompression. For me, it's 30 minutes. For my husband, it's his drive home and sometimes a little bit longer if his day has been really bad. Everyone's needs are different, so find out what's best for you. And if your significant other joins you in making a work-life balance, understand that they may need more time than you, and that's okay. They're not being selfish. They're trying to take care of themselves so they can be a better partner, spouse, friend to everyone. So, a work-life balance is a continuous process and takes time to achieve, but it's not impossible. Just remember, it starts with you. And you want to find an accountability partner who can help you keep your work-life balance. Create boundaries and start small. Take small steps to achieve those boundaries. Prioritize your work tasks. That way you can see when things need to be done and you aren't so overwhelmed. And fires happen. Just don't let them destroy your work-life balance. Don't let them destroy your your new goals for yourself. And most importantly, take time for yourself. That way you can be better for everyone around you, especially yourself. You want to be healthy. And so take time for yourself so you can be a better you. And if you follow these steps, you can make a better work-life balance for yourself, just as I did. Thank you. And here's my references if anybody's interested. Does anybody have any questions?
I haven't seen any questions pop up in the Q&A tab in Hova. But if anyone wants to type into chat some of the things that they do to relieve the stress at the end of the day or maintain that balance. It sounds like we've all had a lot of great tips. I see get a massage once a month. I like that. I know some folks talked about hobbies like knitting and crochet.
Yes, those are all great. I also one of my favorite things to do is paint by numbers, and so I do that on my time off, and it's really relaxing. It's like putting together a puzzle.
Yeah, I get that. It's keeping your hands occupied and
And oftentimes I multitask while I do it, so I listen to like an audiobook.
seeing people who exercise, taking yoga, pedicures, diamond art painting. I don't know what that is. I'll have to look that up.
I've looked into that. I'm really curious. I've been nervous because I feel like I would want to get everything in a straight line. So,
exploring cemeteries. Video games. Did I say that already? Writing. Oh, learning a language. That's smart. Oh, there was a question. I got to pay more attention. Do you have specific reading recommendations for how to set boundaries?
Yes. Hold on. One is Don't Feed the Monkey Mind. That one's helped me the most with setting boundaries. Let me pull up my reading list. The other one that I read that I enjoyed was Set Boundaries, Find Peace, a guide to reclaiming yourself.
And I'll mention, if I didn't already, that these slides with those resources are in a link below the presentation in the agenda. And we have another question. Once you had boundaries in place, did you have family or friends who tried to encroach too much on your new time?
Yes. Yes, that happened quite often. But I basically just told them that I I was taking that time. I needed that time for myself so that I can be a better partner, a better spouse, a better friend, a better daughter, because my mother was the biggest. um, Especially with taking the time for myself. My mother thought that I was being selfish in doing that. And it's not being selfish, because when you take time for yourself to relax and get yourself out of the work mindset, um, and just to get away from the chaos of everything, um, you become a better person. For me, it helped me become a lot calmer, um, less anxious, and it actually made my husband less anxious because I wasn't anxious all the time. And we don't have children, but we do have pets, and it made them less anxious as well. So you can see it, um, how it affects everything in your life, and people will try to get you to break those break those boundaries. One of the reasons why I felt like I had to check my email when I was off was because the library director here said he always checked his email all the time. Even when he was off or on vacation, he checked his email constantly. And so, because he had started doing that, and I was new and starting here, I felt like I had to do that too. But I don't. I don't have to do that. And it was driving me crazy. It was causing me to have really bad anxiety. And I was stressing constantly and could hardly sleep. Um, and I wasn't just making myself miserable, it was branching out, and it would make my husband miserable because he would be trying to relax or something, and I'm over here stressing about work. Um, so yeah, it's really difficult to keep those boundaries, especially when um, everyone around you is working on their time off, or getting everything done all at once, or even not taking them time for themselves. Um, so yeah, it takes time, but when you set those boundaries and you enforce them, eventually those people will stop trying to get you to break those boundaries.
We did have a similar question about how you negotiate the boundaries at work, and you addressed some of that in what you were saying, and also um, tips for just fostering a culture of work-life balance in your team. And this person says, if you're not in a management position, which I think a lot of us can relate to, where we're working from the bottom up to try to have that balance. So if you have any thoughts on how you negotiate that.
I would look at your basically just look at your job, your job description, or if you're a contract employee, look at your contract, because once you're off of work, you're off of work. You're not required to work constantly at home. You're not required to answer emails or anything like that. So I would see what your requirements are for your position, especially if you don't have control over your policy. And then you can share that with your team members. You can say, hey, you're not required to work when you're off. You're not required to automatically say yes and volunteer to do everything. You're not required to get everything done all at once. It's okay to push something back so you can get something more important done. Yeah, that's what I would recommend. And then if you start doing it and it's not like a culture at your work, and you start doing it, and then you can your coworkers see that you're happier, you're enjoying your work more, and you have time for yourself and to do what you want to do when you're off. And you can start encouraging your your coworkers to do that, and that starts changing the culture of your organization.
So we are coming up on the end of the session. There are a few other questions in the chat, and we'll get those to Catherine and address them in the Hoover platform. Also, the link in the chat is there to fill out the post-session survey, and we would all greatly appreciate it if everyone would do that. And Catherine, unless you have any, oh, thank you very much, first of all, for this presentation. I think it's an important topic for all of us. If you have any last words, then we'll close out.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending, and for InWill for giving me this opportunity.
Well, we really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for coming.